Well, hello everybody, welcome back to the channel, and here we go with another episode of Exploring Worlds. So again, sorry for the little bit of a strange title in this episode. After this, I've got some other small clips and photographs and that, like a normal outdoors Exploring Worlds episode, but this time I have another book review slash reading recommendation. I just finished this book, and it is called The Bear's Embrace, A Story of Survival by Patricia Van Tighem, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And this is a great book. It's I found it's definitely it keeps you gripped the whole time that you're reading it, and it's a non-fiction book. It's a memoir. It's a true story, a Canadian story about this woman, Patricia Van Tighem, and her husband, who in the Canadian Rockies both got mauled by a grizzly bear, attacked by a grizzly bear very severely. She got the worst of it, and she was left permanently disfigured. And so yeah, anyway, just this brutal bear attack, and you know, it took years and years to recover. Her body was so heavily damaged that she was in the hospital for a very long time, and in and out of the hospital for many years after the accident. And not only that, but suffered a lot of psychological damage to, you know, definitely like a high level of PTSD and depression and other sorts of psychological issues like that. And you know, she describes very vividly in the story about, you know, these nightmares that she's having, these existential sort of dreadful feelings and thoughts that come over her a lot of times. And you know, and she has these nightmares particularly to do with bears, you know, right? Like she's having these both memories of the attack in her dreams, as well as these sort of existential, sort of symbolic dreams where, you know, she's there was one dream she was talking about where she was in like a hospital bathroom, and you know, there's like she wants to leave, but there's like a bear just like staring at her outside of the, you know, just like waiting for her on the other side of the door. And a lot of this was because she had to be on really heavy-duty painkillers while she was in the hospital, so that was also, as much as it would help the pain and would, you know, basically put her to sleep, it was also causing these different thoughts to constantly surface throughout her duration of being basically unconscious. But still, you know, it is a story of survival. She, you know, her and her husband managed to move forward and keep improving their lives in different ways. She ended up having, I believe it was 3 kids, and if I'm remembering correctly, she might have even had 4. I'm not entirely remembering the details there, but she had several children. And, you know, in spite of all of her physical ailments and her PTSD and that, managed to, you know, carry on with life and create a good life for herself. And what I will say is, okay, I'm talking about all the positives of the book. I'll mention a few negatives. For one, it's a memoir, so it's spoken about through her perspective. It's almost like she's writing it from a first-person perspective, as if it's like what you're reading is what's going through her mind, kind of a thing. And that really worked a lot in a lot of other ways. I think that's what keeps you gripped. But And I know with the situation she was in, thoughts change a lot and emotions change a lot, and there's all these different ups and downs. But I think it could have been written a little bit slower for the reader, in the sense where a subject that's being spoken about, and a thought pattern, and an event change very sporadically, very quickly. And it's not that it's still written in a way where you understand what's going on, but it's a little bit jarring, and it doesn't rest with things quite long enough to really embrace the writing, no pun intended. And I think too that at the beginning of the book, it started to become more grounded a little later in the book, but at the very beginning, before the attack, some of the relationship type, when she's talking about her relationship with her husband, and that is a little bit, I wouldn't say not realistic isn't the right word. It's a little bit derivative of like a romance novel, or like some sort of like some sort of a book that you would read, like almost like a fiction book, like almost exaggerating these different feelings and these different interactions, and that, and not that it's unrealistic or not what actually happened, or not what doesn't happen or possible or anything like that, but it's just written a little bit pretentiously at the very beginning of the book. It grounds out a lot further in. But and also, before I go too long with this review, the bear attack sequence, I guess it's not a sequence because it's not a movie, it's the bear attack chapter, or part I should say, is very hard to read. It's very disturbing. That's the part of the book that the writing was at its most, vivid and the most suspenseful, and just it really rattles you up to read the disturbing details of the attack when it happened. And I'm not one that's like super sensitive to that kind of a thing, or very sensitive to both media, gory stuff on the media, and even in real life. Like I'm not somebody that's bothered tons by things like that, but this one really got to me. It was really harsh the way that it was written. It was basically the bear is chewing on her head and ripping her head apart, and she's describing it very vividly and all the sensations of it. And there's even a part where she's talking about feeling the sensation of the bear's tongue literally like licking and scraping across her skull after all the skin and flesh had been ripped off of her head. And it was a rough part to read. And I'm somebody, I'm one of those people, I get headaches a lot. I've always been that way. I'm just one of those headache people. It's very rare that I don't have a bottle of Advil on me somewhere to take. And I had one of my regular headaches and reading isn't the best thing to do when you have a headache, but it wasn't like a terrible headache. It was just a medium one that I'm used to anyway. And I work later that day, but I had a few hours before I had to go to work. So I thought, it's okay now. I'll wait till, about an hour, 40 minutes or so before I have to start work. Take a couple of Advil then, and then it'll be, kicking in and starting to go away by the time I start work. Seemed like a decent plan for the headache. And as I was reading this really disturbing sequence of somebody's head being torn apart by a bear and all of these gross sensations that come along with that, I finished that part of the book and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take that Advil now. My headache was substantially worse by the time I finished that chapter of the book. So anyway, it's highly recommend reading the book. It's a great read. Very insightful, very emotional. Definitely a story worth being told. I'm glad I read it. Glad it's been written. So that's The Bear's Embrace, A Story of Survival by Patricia Van Tighem. Give this one a read.